no time to call Jersey Central? Join the conversation online and be a part of WCTC's real-time talk. Like 1450 WCTC on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at 1450 WCTC. Jersey Central with Bert Barron.
Think we could listen to the radio or something?
On the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
You put a camera on a guy and you never know what he's going to do if you're watching us online. There he goes. Ken Schlager, editor of New Jersey Monthly Magazine, is back with us for this hour. It's our monthly feature that we call the New Jersey Monthly, where we browse through the current issue. In May 2017, the cover story this time around, the Foodie Bucket List, Essential Eats and Experiences, and we'll be talking about that over the course of this next hour here on Jersey Central. Ken, welcome back. Good to see you. And before we jump into our first story, man, I went right to page 4, and there's a picture of you in Cranford with looks like it appears to be a fine Irish whiskey in your hand and a copy of New Jersey Monthly Magazine. But there's one important aspect of this photo that is missing.
Yeah.
That is me sitting next to you
Oh,
with
sorry.
my own. This hurts me, man. You know how bad this hurts me when I saw this?
You were probably on the air. First of all, I want to correct you on one thing.
Okay.
I'm actually Hillary Clinton.
Because, it's you. Okay.
Yes, it's me. It's me. I'm Hillary Clinton. So just to get that straight, you should be able to recognize the beard. But as far as this photo is concerned, yes, this this particular pub in Cranford, Kilkenny House. Love the name, Kilkenny. They killed Kenny. Please, no, I'm Kenny. But anyway, no, I'm Hillary. But they were the winners of our Best Irish Pub poll. And it was sponsored by, can I say the sponsor?
Of course.
Tullamore Dew, Irish whiskey. And so the folks from Tullamore Dew said, come on over to the pub this morning and we'll take a picture. And we got a picture with the owner of the pub, a charming guy named Barry O'Donovan. And naturally, they started pouring some of this Tullamore Dew out for the photos.
Sure.
And so
when in Rome, right?
So after we were done, Barry offered me a cup of coffee. I said, well, now I'll have a cup of tea. So he made me a cup of tea, and as I'm reaching to pick it up, he dumps one of the shots of Tullamore Dew into my tea. And let me tell you, it was a different kind of morning.
I'm sure it was after that. Very good. Yes, you can mention them and even bring some samples along next time if you remember, of course.
Okay.
All right. Back on track we go. The first story that we'll talk about here in the first segment of this hour. This is about a dig. This is about some archaeological work in Newark that unveiled some interesting finds. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about what that's about.
Speaking of odd things to talk about in the morning, this is our Newark mummies story. Okay.
I would never think that the two will cross.
Yes,
but,
Newark mummies. So let's go back to 1959. In the center of Newark, there's a church, the First Presbyterian Church, and they had this huge burial ground. There were more than 2,000 people buried there. And in 1959, it was paved over as a parking lot, and some of the graves were moved into a smaller burial ground adjacent to the church. And then 2005, on that spot, they were building the Prudential Center. Okay, and so to build the Prudential Center, they unearthed that parking lot, and they had to do a deeper dig to build the Prudential Center, and so they're required to have people on site, because there were graves there, have people on site to inspect the graves before they tear everything up. So they're digging, and the one guy who was in charge of the whole project from the, it was an anthropologist in terms of the dig and finding the graves, the anthropologist named Scott Warnish. He's from, born in Pequannock, he lives in Bloomfield, he went to William Patterson University, got his anthropology degree. Really interesting guy. During the World Trade Center recovery excavations, he was the senior anthropologist there. So he's very experienced in looking at and analyzing remains, shall we say. So anyway, so in the course of this dig, someone on the team finds what they thought initially was a cast iron pipe. You know, they're digging up old graves and finding pieces of coffins and the like. But they find this thing called that they thought was a cast iron pipe. They call him in, Scott Warnish. He comes in, he takes a look, and it turned out to be an iron coffin, which is very unusual.
Wow.
And then they kept digging, and they found another. And now I've seen pictures of these things. We have one picture in the article there, I think right next to your finger. You can see it.
That's cool.
And it looks like what we think of as an old mummy case from Egypt. It was cast iron. It was thoroughly rusted. but it was closed, and it was a total mystery. And so Scott Warner started researching these things, and these coffins were made in the middle of the 19th century. They were generally made for wealthy people because it would preserve their body. This is before we had the embalming methods that are used today.
Mm-hmm.
It was also used for diseased people. There was a lot of disease like cholera, and they wanted to be able to seal the people, and so that people coming to their funerals wouldn't catch the diseases. And they were actually made. This particular coffin and others like it were made by a company in Queens called Fisk, So they removed these two coffins, and he started studying them, and it turned out, luckily enough, that one of them still had a nameplate on the outside. And it turned out that the man inside was a man named Captain William A. Pollard. He died in September of 1854. He was 38 years old. It took a few years to actually open these things because there were questions about jurisdiction and the like.
Oh, sure.
So in the meantime, Warner starts doing investigations. He learns about the Fisk Metallic Burial Case Company, and then he starts studying Pollock. And it turns out this guy Pollock was born in Newark in 1816. He moved to Jersey City around 1841. He started out as a lamplighter, right, back when there were gas lamps around the city. He became chief engineer of the Jersey City Fire Department. He was a deputy sheriff in Hudson County. So he was a big deal, this guy. And they surmised he had a very big funeral, and he probably died of a contagious disease like cholera. So they had to seal his body like that.
Yeah, wow.
So it took 4 years. Finally, in 2009, they got to open the coffins, and discovered that the bodies inside were quite well preserved. Although in the 4 years after since they were dug up, they probably degraded a little.
Oh, I'm sure.
They were able to identify the other person as a woman named Mary Camp Roberts, and Warnish described what he saw to our reporter. This woman, her body was still very much intact. This is somebody who died in 1850. Right? Her body was very much intact. He said her hair was braided and styled into like Princess Leia type buns she had, and she had a little flower pinned to her shroud, and he could still feel the soft tissue on her,
That's amazing.
on her body. He said it was like soapy sausages, he described it. She's a woman born in 1764, so her body was still intact at that point. The Smithsonian has now, taken over possession of these things.
Oh, sure.
But they're very rare. It's believed to be the only time that such iron coffins were found, have been found in New Jersey. They were only used during that particular period. They were very expensive, and so they were used very rarely. And the other interesting thing that's come out of this is that with that body, they took like 3D photos of this guy Captain Pollard's what was left of his face, and they brought them to New York City, a school called the New York Academy of Art, when they took a 3D print, and the students there created a clay sculpture. They basically recreated the guy's face.
Wow.
Creating a clay sculpture of his face. So now Warnish is going to the photo archives. This is sort of the epilogue to the story. He's going to the photo archives of the Jersey City Police and Fire Departments and trying to see if there's actually any photos. Remember, he died in, 1854 or something like that. And to see if there were any photos, because they would take group photos then, and try to actually find a photo of this guy whose body he has.
Man.
So it's a very interesting little bit of bizarre sort of detective work, and kind of an engaging story.
Another reason to think of it as the Iron City, right?
Brick City. Brick City, brick, iron. Yeah, okay, close enough.
Wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah,
an unbelievable story. I could imagine. Thank goodness they didn't keep digging and find hundreds of these things.
Well, they found hundreds of remains.
Right, but I mean these iron things
all
here,
degraded
right?
as one would expect over the course. This was an old 19th century cemetery. So to find in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Newark, two perfectly preserved bodies in these coffins that really do look like rusted old Egyptian sarcophagus.
That's what it looks like. You're right.
Yes.
That's exactly
I don't think
it.
I've ever said that word before.
First time for everything.
Yeah.
And you can read, of course, the full story in the current issue, and that picture there is really just remarkable.
Yeah.
Yep. Just getting started with Ken Schlager here on the New Jersey